Now, as you have heard, the title is The Rebirth of the Soul, and this talk is actually not about reincarnation, but rebirth in a different sense. It is in the sense of being and feeling reborn. You probably had this type of experiences where you felt reborn. And when you think about the bird, the phoenix, it is not just the body of the phoenix that is reborn, it is also the spirit in the phoenix bird that is reborn too. So when we get in touch with the soul consciousness, that is when we feel reborn, and even evidence suggests that people who get in touch with their soul consciousness, they experience healing, physical healing, right? So we can take this notion, reborn, very practically. And actually this talk is about practice, because if you understand the practice, what it means, what it should be, we are halfway there to do it properly. Now the subtitle is Remembering the Formless. Now this may sound strange, but this is what I'm going to explain, what it is. And I hope you're going to understand it at the end of the talk. Who are we? Now, how important it is to know who we are? I believe it is very important, it is very essential to know, because if we know who we are, then we know what to do. So people who do bad things, they don't know who they are. If we believe that we are this physical body, we will act accordingly, according to our beliefs, according to our identification. So our behavior, to a great degree, is determined by our identifications. What are identification? What is an identification? It is an attachment to a form. So when one is attached to the form, one extends one's identity upon that form. So one extends his notion of mental I to a form, and that is an identification. Now let us see what Theosophy tells us about who we are. Now you've probably seen these diagrams before, and also I heard that Ted Kapstick explained a lot about these different levels and different planes, so I'm not going to go into it. I want to address a very practical aspect of the spiritual facts that we have spiritual bodies. So here we can see, of course, different aura-like bodies which work on different frequencies, so from physical up to the monadic plane. Now here on the right side you can see three aspects of our manifestation. So first is the monad. A monad reflects in the soul. The soul creates personalities. So we, at the moment, right now, in this room, are conscious or aware of our personality. That is where we are. So the question, of course, is the relationship between the soul and personality, and that is where we're going to go now. Now note here how the mental plane is divided in two parts. One is concrete mind, another one is abstract mind. Now the other words which are used to explain these two mental planes or subplanes are rupa and arupa. So rupa means form, arupa, non-form, negation of form. Rupa, form, arupa, formless. Formless. So that means that the abstract mind, or a higher mind, higher mental plane, right, it doesn't have forms. It is formless. Concrete mind does have forms, and this is where our consciousness works at the moment, now, in this room. While I speak to you, I'm now creating thought forms, mental forms, on the lower mental plane, and I am sending them to you. So you have registered them. But can you register abstract thought? Can you register the pure consciousness of the abstract mind, which is formless? And this is an interesting question. Now, a very important point of this talk is that all the planes below abstract mind or high mind are form type of planes. They are form type of reality. So it is not that just lower mental has forms. The forms exist on astral, and obviously they exist on the physical plane. So we live, our personality lives in a form world, the world of forms. And this body is also a form on those three planes, three lowest planes. Now everything above lower mental plane is arupa or formless. So it's not just that higher mental plane is formless, but also Buddhic, Atmic, and so monadic planes. So everything above personality is formless, has no form, not as we know it, not as we can imagine it even. So let's simplify our diagram, and now this diagram becomes more practical. Because what can we say about the consciousness on the Buddhic plane, or consciousness on the kind of abstract mind plane? We can't say much. The only thing which we can speak about is concrete mind, emotions, and physical body. Everything above this, we can call it the formless essence. That is, so our essence, our soul, to our personality, of which we are aware, is the formless essence. So this is in practice, because we don't really have a consciousness above the concrete mind to see any differentiation there. All our consciousness is here, which is reflecting the higher type of consciousness, which is formless. So we can say the pure consciousness, which is behind the thoughts, is formless. Now this is actually a quite important point, because this is going to help us understand how to get there, how to get to the soul consciousness. If you understand that our true essence, our true consciousness, has no form. And it's not just that our personalities is a part of this relationship between formless and form, but the entire world, the entire manifested world, is actually that which was formless, which expresses itself through form. So let's make some parallels about this. We can think of fire. You probably heard that expression, that God is all-consuming fire. Now, if we imagine that everything is a cosmic fire, that every form in the universe, in manifestation, is a flame. It's a flame within that fire. That also means that our personality and our existence here and now is a flame. But our true nature actually is that formless cosmic fire behind it. The another parallel is with the ocean that is often used, that every form and our personal existence, our personality, like my personality, like Christian body, is a wave on top of an ocean, the ocean of oneness, the ocean of supreme consciousness. So that is what my manifestation is as a person, a wave. And everything we see around us, everything, absolutely everything, any form, the chair, the table, the walls, is also a wave on that ocean of consciousness. So our problem is that we identify with the wave, right? And we see other waves, and then we compete with other waves. So everyone here in this room is a wave on that ocean of consciousness. However, because we identify with the wave, we forget that we are actually the unifying reality, the one life. And this has to be taken literally, because this is literally true. That is what Theosophy is teaching. All we see is a wave on the ocean of cosmic consciousness. Now the third parallel is with the sun. So if you imagine the spiritual sun, then everyone here is a ray of the sun. And as the ray reflects in a form, it may forget its source. It may forget who and what it is. But if the ray looks into itself, then it's going to find its true nature and realize, oh, I am the spiritual sun. No, I am the essence of things. And this is what happened to the masters, this is happened to the yogis and to the saints. That is a part of their practice. And this is also something will happen to everybody now and then. But the point is to find a way to experience this more often and to establish ourselves in this permanently. Now let's talk about attributes of the formless. There is a reason why I'm using this word formless, because it shows something about the quality of that what we call one life, or that what we call spirit. Because spirit is a bit overused word, similar is with God. You don't know what you mean anymore. But when you say formless, we're giving it some description and direction where to look for it. So we are talking here about the formless, not any type of form, but the formless. Right. So let's see what are the attributes of it. First is space. For space seems to contain all, right? It is omnipresent. So when we look at the objects, we have a space, physical object, we have space in between objects. We have space around objects. And if you look into the physical objects, what did science find deep inside the matter itself? Again, is space. So what space represents on a physical level is consciousness. So there is a correspondence between physical space or our notional space and consciousness. And this is why when people do meditation or enlightened people, they feel they're actually embracing the universe. So their speciality, their spaceness, seems to be expanding and they become non-local. That is because the formless have this attribute of spaceness, if you can call it like that. And so in us, it manifests as alert inner space or pure consciousness. So if you look into the mind, we also have thoughts. What is in between thoughts and behind thoughts? It is pure consciousness. If you look deep into the thoughts, try to analyze, we're going to find again consciousness. It's same like with waves. We look in between the waves, the ocean is there, and the water. If you look inside a particular wave, again we find the ocean.
So this is this analogy, space, consciousness, direct kind of connection. Okay, next attribute is timelessness. So the linear time is the nature of form. But on the formless level, that means on the level of soul consciousness, the time does not exist as we perceive it here and now. There is no time as such, and that is why the spiritual masters, yogis and saints, they seem to easily read both past and future, and they live in eternity, or they live in the now with a capital N. So it's a different type of now than we live. So this is also an attribute of the formless, or our formless essence, or our soul consciousness. Now, next attribute is presence. What is presence? Well, one definition is awareness of consciousness itself. Now, some people say, well, presence is consciousness of your own consciousness. So you're conscious of your own consciousness. Now, this is a little bit confusing, so I think it is easier to use slightly different word, even though they may mean the same. Awareness of consciousness itself. And this is actually a great trick, so to speak, when somebody is looking for one's own soul, that one has to become aware of one's own consciousness in order to find one's own souls. The next attribute is silence, for all sounds are forms and arise out of silence. Right? Without silence, we wouldn't be able to hear any sounds. Silence is between sounds. If we analyze any sound, again, we're going to find silence in there. So same is with the space, and same is with the consciousness in our mind, same relationship, that the words and the sounds that appear in reality are contained and sustained by silence. Being. Now being, you can say the being, or just being with the capital B, is again an attribute that people say a kind of enlightened person lives in being. So this is our true essence, our formless essence, is being, from which becoming comes out into manifestation. So becoming is a part of the form. Becoming is what we call spiritual evolution. The form is evolving. But the being is out of time. The being cannot evolve. The self is the universal, like the universal or cosmic self, or the supreme consciousness, or the supreme being, that is always. It is beyond time, beyond change. It is omnipresent. So this is what we mean by being. Oneness or love that holds all together, like the ocean holds the waves. Now, this is now a logical consequence that anything that is the ground of being has to hold and be synthesizing principle of everything in existence. Therefore is love. Therefore is oneness. So oneness is, and love, they are formless. They manifest themselves, they express their potentials through a form, but they themselves are formless. The unmanifested, that which is beyond form or conception. And this, of course, is a logical consequence. The formless, or our formless essence, ultimately is the
unmanifested. But this is not just for an individual, it is also for the entire manifestation, for the entire universe. When you say the ground of being, the very source of all, is the unmanifested. So let's now come back to the question, who are we? Now, considering everything that I said about the nature of our formless essence, all the attributes, let's now come back and say who we are. We are the Atman or the monad, the spark of God. We are the formless, the eternal life that gives rise to all. Who are we truly? We are the unmanifested, the silent, the omnipresent, the timeless. We are the cosmic self, one life, the creator of the universe. Who are we truly? We are the great intangible that reflects in the small tangible. We are the self rooted in emptiness that is not empty. Who are we truly? We are the bridge between manifest nature and the absolute. Who are we? We are the sons of God and the revealers of the cosmic mystery. Who are we truly? We are the deathless, the indestructible life. That is who we truly are. That is who we truly are. Not this form, not this wave on the ocean of cosmic consciousness. And the question is how to break this identification with this form, how to realize that our true being is formless, timeless, and encompasses all. How does one realize this? How does one experience this? Well, I'm sure you have experienced this, more or less, But how to establish in that permanently, that is the quest on the spiritual path. Now, the word formless is actually used a lot in the Theosophical literature, and in the Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky used it over 40 times. Now, you may say, well, this is quite a big book, so it's not that much. However, the word formless is not a very typical word in English language. I mean, how many times did you use that word? Now, Blavatsky is not just using the word formless. She's using arupa, she's using uncreated, unmanifested, non-being, and another words which means the same thing. And even the titles of the 3 books, like Isis Unveiled, The Secret Doctrine, and The Voice of the Silence, again imply that there is some hidden thing, hidden reality, which is unmanifested to our perception and our cognition. So is Blavatsky trying to say something with these titles? Well, the answer is yes. Blavatsky is always saying something. So here I just found 2 quotes in which Blavatsky relates formless spirit with interior or invisible world. This is the one way to use formless. And another quote, she says the Atma Bodhi, whose names are legion, are still formless. So she is now confirming that what I told you, that above the concrete mind, all the worlds, the spiritual worlds, are formless. Okay, now let's not talk about the identification with the mind. which I think is kind of very important topic for intellectual academics and theosophists, theologians, and so on, because they like to use the mind a lot. And this is connected with this identification and understanding the difference between the form and our formless essence. So usually, I already mentioned here 2 mind traps. There are more than 2, but these are very typical and prevailing, and you're going to understand them straight away. The first is the compulsive nature of the mind that is entwined with desires, pleasure, pain, the hurt from the past, and fear of the future. So we Theosophists call this kama manas, mind desire. So that is, and you probably notice that in your mind when you get up and then when you go to sleep, what happened in your mind during the day? Almost 99% of mental activity is this first one, compulsive nature of mind. Kind of pain, pleasure, what I'm going to do, why somebody told me this, and so on, or I'm hungry, and things like this. So that's 99, and it seems that about 99 is actually activities of the mind is completely useless. It's just circling, going around in our minds, this other what I want and enthusiasm, then people fall into depression and complain and criticize, then again enthusiasm, pleasure, pain, so go up and down, this kind of very dual, which is to do with the astral body and emotions. Now the second trap is the limitation of conceptual knowledge. So our conceptual knowledge, or we can say linguistic knowledge, is limited. And that's the fact. Why it is limited? Because it's using forms. And forms are limited, while that which is behind the form is not limited. Behind the form is the pure universal consciousness, or the supreme consciousness. So every form is limited and in time. So therefore, the conceptual knowledge also is limited by definition. It are just forms. The forms that carry meanings. Now, kind of a grave consequences of attachment to it. Now I say grave because in my experience and what I read and seen, well, in myself as well and in other people, the consequences are grave. And I'm not going to go into this, how grave it is and what happens, because I don't want to scare you. But actually, you see, it's not just my philosophy. Now you're going to see what other teachers say about this identification or attachment to the concrete mind, which creates these linguistic forms or so-called conceptual knowledge, and what happens when we identify to it. So, for these 2 reasons alone, but there are more reasons, much deeper, more sophisticated ones, which we cannot investigate in this short lecture. For those 2 reasons, at least, it is said that mind is the great slayer of the real. And what's the real? What is the real? The real is one life, the supreme consciousness, which is all, which supports and sustains all. That one life, consciousness, or being, that ocean or consciousness, or call it as you like. Some people would say God, but we're not going to go there right now. So that is the real. And so mind is slaying the real. How is mind slaying the real? It's slaying the real by identifying with form, and therefore it forgets its true source. It falls into the illusion of separateness. That is how the mind is slaying the real. It says also, slay the slayer. How do we slay this slayer? How do we slay this mind, which is slaying the true knowledge of oneness? The mind cannot slay another mind. Intensify it. So, how do we slay the slayer? through detachment from the lower mind, through detachment from the forms which are created by the lower mind, from detachment from the conceptual knowledge. Once withdraws the consciousness into the pure consciousness, and therefore the illusion falls. And in a way, one without really slaying anybody, one slays this layer, the mind, by remembering our true nature. That is how the mind is slayed. Now, I'm sure you heard of Krishnamurti. He, one of his first books was Freedom from the Known. So why would he do such a book, Freedom from the Known? What's the need for it? Well, see, this is connected with breaking the identification with the mind, or with the forms which the mind creates, and breaking the identification with the conceptual knowledge. Somebody asked him how to know God, how to know it, how to find it. And this is what he says. To find the real, all the verbal utterances of the mind must cease. The image of reality must cease for reality to be. The mind must put aside its content, the known. To pursue God, you must know God. To know or think what you're pursuing is not to know God. The response which urges you to pursue is born of memory. So what you seek is already created. That which is created is not eternal. It is a product of the mind. Okay, so this is important. That which is created is not eternal. No form is eternal. No form in the universe is eternal. They all perish. They're all transient. That does include knowledge itself, because every knowledge is an interpretation and therefore is a form, and even that form will perish. The knowledge itself, the words which we are using, they're going to perish because they're not eternal, they are created. So it is not just about thoughts in our mind, but the all manifest reality works exactly the same way. They are just the thoughts in the minds of certain cosmic beings. Therefore this world, the manifest world, will also disappear. But that which has created the form is eternal and cannot disappear, and that is who we truly are. That which is behind the form. Now you may understand why Krishnamurti said imagination kills the truth, because when mind creates the forms, the words, he's just putting labels on things. Putting labels on things. So it's not a real thing anymore. And also the mind will try to explain things in terms of its own paradigm. Therefore it will project the limitations of conceptual knowledge upon reality. Therefore the mind slays the real, the oneness, the spirit, the one life which is everywhere, in everything, and in ourselves. Hence he said, truth is a pathless land. One cannot define the truth. Truth is not words. Truth is not knowledge. Truth is not form. The other book of Krishnamurti calls Awakening of Intelligence. Now, why would this call Awakening of Intelligence? Well, this awakening is a consequence of the detachment from the lower mind and living in pure consciousness. You see, the intelligence which works through our concrete mind or knowledge or our linguistic expression originates beyond form. It comes from pure consciousness, or our formless essence. If somebody learns how not to detach to the mental forms and get in touch with the source, then intelligence can work through. And that is why that is awakening of intelligence. That is what Krishnamurti was talking about. Pure consciousness brings true intelligence. Now, in The Voice of the Silence by Blavatsky, there are some interesting statements. One where he says, false learning is rejected by the wise and scattered to the winds by the good law, which is karma, of course. Its wheel revolves for all, the humble and the proud. And now, Blavatsky distinguishing between two types of doctrines. One he calls doctrine of the I, and he says it is for the crowd. The second one is the doctrine of the heart, for the elect. The first repeat in pride, behold, I know. It's like scientists and academics and people who are attached to conceptual knowledge. The last, they who in humbleness have garnered, lo, confess, thus have I heard. As you notice, there is a bit of detachment here. Thus have I heard. It's not kind of heavy clinging, yes, I know it. I'm powerful, I'm smart. A bit of detachment. Peace. Yeah. Thus have I heard. Now, this is interesting. She says the doctrine of the I is for the crowd, the doctrine of the heart for the elect. Now, we have a problem here. Are you the elect? Are you? Well, I'll tell you, you have to be. Do you know why? Because this civilization is too technically powerful to live only by the doctrine of the I. Maybe in the past, the civilization could do this, and because they were slaughtering each other, but they couldn't affect the planet. They couldn't destroy the planet. Now humanity can do it. Therefore, doctrine of the heart is no longer for the elect. It cannot be. It has to be now for everybody. It has to be for you as well. Because otherwise there's not going to be the world. I also go to explain why. So in a way, this is something revolutionary. The world is in such a crisis that it cannot live in delusions anymore. That is why now we are in a way forced, and that's how things are, we are in a way forced to look, okay, what is this doctrine of the heart? What is this really? Okay, in the other quote from The Voice of the Silence, it is said, it, the heart most merciful, isolates the arhat both from strife and lust. It leads him through the fields of being unto the peace and bliss known only in the land of silence and non-being. Now this silence not being sounds like formless, doesn't it? Formless essence. What is interesting in this quote is that the heart most merciful is connected with silence and non-being. Why would these two things be connected? What they have got to do with each other? We were talking about the attributes of the formless. One of those attributes of the formless was one life and love with synthesizing all. Right? So here is a connection. Whoever finds in himself the heart most merciful, he will find silence and non-being. Whoever finds silence and non-being will find the heart most merciful.
also said, saith the great law, in order to become the knower of all self, thou hast first of self to be the knower. How one can become the knower of one's own self? Well, that is said in the quote above, through the heart most merciful and silence and non-being. That is how one can find one's own self. And final quote from The Voice of the Silence is, but even ignorance is better than head learning with no soul wisdom to illuminate and guide it. Now, I did say that there are grave consequences of attachment to conceptual knowledge. Because such an attachment is reducing the amount of present consciousness. That's what happens. When somebody attaches to a form, he starts forgetting his source, and the consciousness is being reduced. The vibration falls. So basically, anybody who attaches to any form will fall. And that does include the forms of the mind which are now in our heads. There is no difference. So just as we have to be careful not to attach to our objects, to money, cars, or I don't know what, this body, the same is with the mind and that which our mind creates. We should not be identified with it or attached to it. So let's draw some conclusion about the attachment to knowledge. The mental forms can be something beautiful and complex on its own level, and therefore attractive to acquire and idolize. So idolize because it's beautiful. And this happens to everybody. So this is the one cause why we attach to knowledge. Now you probably heard the story about Moses when he went to the mountain to see God. And he asked God, okay, what is your name? I want to tell my people your name. What's the name of our God? So what did God say? He said, I am that I am. He did not want to give any form to people to cling to at all. So when Moses came back to his people, this is a story, I don't know it. I don't believe it was exactly like this, but it's a good story. He told people about that God. It seemed the God was formless. I am that I am. This is no form, just being. And so people said, okay, Moses came back to the mountain. What did people do? They said, oh, what is this thing, formless essence, unmanifested being, non-being? This is all nonsense. And we want form, something solid. So according to the story, they made a golden bull. Right, and they had a party, drinking food and sex, and there has been hell ever since, as well as before. So it seems the mental form provides something stable to hold on for the personality that has not learned yet to rest on pure consciousness or God or spirit. So there is something stable to hold on when we have a form. That does include knowledge. So we are going to cling to knowledge because we are not ready, or we don't know how to do it, to rest on pure consciousness or God the Spirit, which is our formless essence, which is our true nature, which is the truth. Now, are we ready? Are we in this room? Are we ready to rest in pure consciousness? Well, as I said, we don't have much choice.
We don't have much choice because the world is trapped in attachment to forms, and it's too powerful and it's destroying the planet. And we'll come to that later. So a conclusion is that a true spiritual aspirant must not attach to the form of a teaching, but be one with the source of the teaching. So the teachings have form, like Theosophical teachings, they have a form. But the purpose of this form, and it's always in religions, is to point the way. Where? To the source. That's why the teaching is here, to help us be one with the source, not to attach to a form of a teaching. And I bet you notice this in the religions, when people believe in the Bible instead of God. The form. But it's not just about religion, it's same with the science. The science, they have their stories, the best stories ever told, Charles Darwin, the prophet. Well, not quite, but almost. They have their story ever told. Christians have their story ever told about, Jesus' birth and stuff. So it seems all these religions, or non-religious ideologies, they have their stories, and they idolize the story. Well, story is a form. Therefore, it cannot be truth, because truth is eternal and formless. Now let's come to a more practical bit. Presence. As I said, the presence, or definition, is to be aware of one's own consciousness. So how can one break away from any identification with any form whatsoever on any plane? The answer is through presence. So the way to pure consciousness, or our essence, is through silence, peace, and stillness. Now there is this kind of parallel with the lake, that our mind is like a lake. There are waves on top of the surface, so you come down, no waves, you can see through. But I think that's a bit of silly, parallel, because why would you want to see the bottom of the lake? I think there is something better to understand why silence, peace, and stillness is important. When I was talking about the attributes of the formless, silence, peace, and stillness were the attributes of the formless, or our true spirit. That means, according to the law of correspondence and the law of attraction, if we establish silence, peace, and stillness in our personality, we are creating connection with the spiritual worlds, because they have exactly the same attributes. That's the one thing. The other thing, if we have silence, peace, and stillness in our personality, we create harmony in our personality. Again, according to the law of attraction, that harmony will attract the corresponding harmony from the spiritual and formless worlds, because that is their nature. So you can see this is much deeper subject, why silence and peace and stillness matter, and why they are the way to experience and get to the soul consciousness. And so please take this completely practically and literally about silence. This is not some kind of a theory, but it's something which one has to understand and find a way how to establish in one's own personality in order to get in touch with the soul consciousness. So when we are in touch with being, we are in presence, or now with capital N, because being is beyond time, it is timeless. And you probably experience this change of perception of time depending on your state of consciousness. The time can disappear, the space can disappear, and one can feel non-local, being everywhere at the same time, or nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Consciousness can do this. That is the nature of consciousness. So to be permanently in it is enlightenment. So that's what enlightenment is. So the supreme consciousness, the witness, or the self, can be found in the pauses between words, thoughts, or activities. It is always there. So I was saying how the consciousness is everywhere and in everything, but we want to find it. Where are we going to look for it? The easiest way to find it is in the pauses. So you see, the truth is not in the words. The truth is in between the words, in the pauses. Why is it there? Because there is the ground of being. There is a supreme consciousness which gives rise to the mental forms. And that supreme consciousness is the truth, not the mental forms, not the words, not the knowledge, not the sounds, not the objects, physical objects. As it is above, so it is below. So on all levels, the truth is behind, in the pauses, in silence, in peace, in stillness. So we have to take this practically. Okay, this is the last slide. I'm on time. Even though our essence is timeless, in the world of form, I think I managed to be on time. So, living above thought is the true theosophy. And I hope you can understand this. Why? Because that is from where the theosophical teachings come from. It comes from the higher consciousness, which is beyond form, beyond the lower mind, beyond the conceptual or linguistic knowledge. That's where the truth is. So, the importance of the non-identification with the mind is incredible. Because if one is not identified with the mind, he has this pure consciousness, he's got then therefore true intelligence, as the Krishnamurti said, awakening of intelligence. Only then person can understand what theosophical teachings are about. If he has this pure consciousness, then understand why it is said, what is said, and where does it come from. If one is identified with the conceptual knowledge, one is not going to understand it. In fact, a person can get deluded, right? Because of this personal identification, personifying an expression, a form, or a sign, a pointer, then yes, this is the truth. No, it is not the truth, it is a pointer to the truth. And it is often stated in the book How to Study Theosophy. The Blavatsky herself said the same thing. She said, you're not going to find the truth in the secret doctrine, but you can find the pointers to the truth. So this is not, I hope you understand, this is not my personal philosophy. The end of history, the end of all stories. And now this is very important to understand. It doesn't matter what the story is that we identify to. The problem with humanity at the moment is that people are so identified with their minds, and such state of consciousness has reached the end of its possibilities, especially because of the powerful technology that we have that can destroy the whole planet. The only solution for humanity is to move with consciousness above the thought. So it doesn't matter what the story is, a Christian story, is it a theosophical story, Marxist story. If one is identified with the story, one is identified with the form, therefore consciousness
is going to be according to the identification, which means materialistic. So yes, you can believe in a Blavatsky, or you can believe in God, but if one is identified with conceptual interpretation, one is on that level, and there is no enlightenment there, and such an identification cannot solve the problems of the world. But yet we see in the TV news and TV people looking for the new story, new definition, new explanation, academics trying to find the knowledge. There is no any solutions. There is no any solution in the identification with the knowledge. The solution is being aware of one's formless essence. Only then person knows how to correctly use the knowledge. But knowledge is to be used as a tool. It's not who we are. So that type of consciousness will bring the birth of new consciousness. And if many people move their consciousness above the thought, that will generate or create a new world. And I assure you that there is no other way to create a new world, because no clever story will be able to do so. Only detachment and living above the thought can actually create the new world. So that is my message. And I'll finish this talk with this sentence I wrote. When we experience our formless essence, or the soul consciousness, we will rise like the phoenix from the ashes of our attachments. So, thank you very much.